Hey y'all, I'm Dr. Lucretia Cook, but you can call me Dr. Lala. Welcome back to another episode of the Revolve Podcast, where grief and loss are a journey, not a final destination. I'm so excited to see you today because if you were watching this episode, that means you made it through your first Thanksgiving after losing someone. I know, right? And I am so proud of you because you made it, right? There may have been some tears, there may have been a few smiles, but you survived. And that counts, right? And so today we want to honor that strength, the strength that you didn't even know you had, right? Because I know there were some moments when you were wondering if you were going to make it, and you did, right? Because the truth is, surviving grief during the holidays, especially that very first one, it's not a little thing. It's actually a pretty big deal. And so I'm so happy to have you here with me. And so I would like to talk to you about what that looks like, right? Because and share my first holiday after loss with you. Okay? So mine was Thanksgiving of 2015. We had actually lost my daddy. If you've been with us for a while, then you know my dad was killed by a truck driver who was driving while under the influence, right? And also during that time, my mom was in that car wreck with him. And so when Thanksgiving rolled around, she had just been released to rehab. And I'll be honest, it was a pretty rough season. She was still a little confused. She had had some amnesia. She had a traumatic and an anoxic brain injury, so we were still wondering if she was ever going to get her full memory back. And so while she had begun to recognize us at this point, we were still struggling with the fact that Daddy wasn't coming back. And so it was a rough time, but we survived it, right? There were so many things that we had to be thankful for, despite the fact that Daddy wasn't going to be home with us for Thanksgiving that year, right? And even in the horror of all of it, God showed himself to be mighty and strong and with us every step of the way. On my way to the hospital Thanksgiving morning, I was really having a hard time. My heart was heavy. I was thinking about Daddy. I was thinking about Mommy. I was thinking about my siblings. My baby brother at that point wasn't married. He doesn't have any children. And I just kept thinking about all of these things that we were going to miss out, right? And as I'm sitting there and I'm crying, and I began to just really think on how bad things could have been, right? And that's not to discount what was going on, but it could have been so much worse because the reality is we could have lost my mom that night in the accident too. And as I began to drive down the road, this song, the lyrics are "Give thanks with a grateful heart, for all the things he's done," right? And that song just began to just continue to repeat itself in my spirit because it was like I'm focusing on the bad, but the reality is we could have had 2 funerals that year, right? And so although my heart was filled with hurt in the moment, it was also filled with thanks. And even today, I'm thankful. And here's the thing, that's what strength looks like sometimes. Sometimes it looks like holding hurt and thanks at the same time. Right? And that's okay. I think sometimes we tend to forget that that's possible, that hurting doesn't take away the fact that you're grateful, right? And so then what does strength look like when you're just trying to survive, right? And scripture tells us in Isaiah 40:29 that he gives strength to the weary. And sometimes we need it, right? Sometimes we need that strength from him, because the reality is strength often looks like we have to work. We're still taking care of our families, right? If you have loved ones in the hospital or anything like that, you're still taking those trips to the hospital. You're still trying to manage the family and navigate your new normal, right? And sometimes people will say, "You are so strong." Have you had that moment where you thought to yourself, did I have any choice? Right? Or maybe it was just me. Because I'll be honest, I had moments when it was like people were telling us, like, you guys are so strong. I don't know how you're doing this. And it was like, we didn't really have a choice. And his strength was made perfect in our weakness. Because it was no strength of our own. It was but by the grace of God that we had survived that, right? And so our strength in that season wasn't a performance. It was like obedience. It was like God giving it to us and telling us to work with it. Because although we had lost daddy, we still had to take care of mommy and figure out what that was going to need to look like, right? It looked like showing up when everything in me wanted to curl up in a ball and disappear. And through it all, the Father was holding me. He was holding my siblings. Even when we didn't feel like it, he was right there. And the truth is, he's right there for you too, right? And can I just have an honest and transparent moment with you right here? I leaned into God, but there were some moments that I wrestled too. Am I allowed to say that? That sometimes I wrestled with it? Because my parents were good people, right? They lived their lives in service to the kingdom. My daddy was a pastor for years, and mommy was right there with him. And so there was a part of me that just had a hard time reconciling how people who were so faithful could be taken in that way. One taken and one hurt so severely. And I'll be honest, it didn't feel fair. But I kept praying, right? And I kept saying that I will bless the Lord at all times. I will bless the Lord at all times. And I'll be honest with you, sometimes we have to be intentional in this season of life, right? Because the truth is, things like anxiety and depression, they can be rough to battle with sometimes. And sometimes it can be difficult to find a praise, right? Sometimes it's hard to do that. And so we have to look for ways. We have to look for, even a song, right? Something to take us to that moment where we can be thankful. Even in the space of allowing ourselves to feel how we feel. That it's okay to not be okay. And we can still find that space of being not okay and still being able to be thankful. Right? That doesn't make you less faithful. It doesn't make you less of a believer. These feelings make us human, right? And despite it all, the tears, maybe the anger or frustration, you made it through it, right? And again, I'm sure you had some moments where you wondered if you would, but you did, right? And so if I could say anything to you, I would say you survived. You did it. And I can't promise you that you won't still have moments where it still hurts. Because the truth is, you probably will. But one thing I will tell you is as the time goes on and seasons change, we get better at carrying these hurts, right? If you feel numb, exhausted, unsure if you did the right thing, that's normal, right? And it takes tremendous effort to keep going when everything in you wanted to stop. But you didn't stop. You didn't quit. You showed up for yourself. You showed up for your family. And that is more than enough, right? So let's honor that, right? Because sometimes it helps to put these emotions and feelings into words, right? So you could do something like writing a letter to yourself and start it with, "Dear me, I'm proud of you for," right? Because sometimes we don't give ourselves enough credit, right? It's okay to pat yourself on the back sometimes. You got up when you really wanted to stay in bed, right? Or you could start a strength journal or a scrapbook. This is a place where you could put photos and scriptures or things that remind you of the things that you've survived, the things that you've conquered in this season when everything in you told you to give up, but you kept going, right? Right? You can speak it aloud that I made it through and I'm still here, right? And here's the truth. That process may be ugly sometimes, but that's okay. Perfection isn't required, just your presence, just showing up. That's all. Just show up. Show up for your family, but most importantly, show up for you. Because you are worth the work. You are worth showing up for. You are worth the effort of keeping going. Keep going, right? The other thing I would like to encourage you to do if you haven't started yet is therapy. I know, right? I'm always talking about therapy. But here's the truth. Therapy isn't a betrayal of our faith, right? It's a tool that God can use to help us process, heal, and grow. Therapy gives us a place where we can learn to name what we're carrying, reframe our thoughts, and build emotional resilience, right? Because a lot of times we have spaces where we can talk. We have family and friends who love us. But most of the time we're worried about how we feel is going to affect them, right? When we go and we have counsel with a therapist or a grief counselor, we don't have to worry about how our feelings are going to affect them. Because the truth is, when we hurt, the people who love us hurt. And so that keeps us from really saying how we really feel, right? But the truth is, you don't have to go on this journey alone, right? Faith anchors our soul, but therapy strengthens our minds, right? And when we do those things together, we get a whole healing, right? Because it's important that we take care of our spiritual being, but also our natural being. Those two things work together. And we do ourselves a disservice when we focus on one and neglect the other, right? So if you haven't sought out a therapist, I encourage you to do that. Because it helps to be able to release some of those burdens so that you don't keep carrying it around. Because the truth is, A broken heart can make you really sick, right? And so we want you to take care of yourselves, not just spiritually, but mentally and emotionally as well, right? So again, you made it through Thanksgiving, and I am so proud of you. And I want you to just take a moment, take a deep breath, lift your head, and keep moving forward. Because forward movement, no matter how small, is still progress. So keep going. You got this. One moment, one breath at a time. And so until next time, keep choosing healing, keep choosing joy. I love y'all. Bye.